We're going to record this for the Alumni Association. Formally, hi, I'm Rebecca Helford. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I am a proud Maple Center alum. And I'm here in my private practice office in Santa Monica on Ocean Park Boulevard, where I work with people on what I call transformational trauma therapy, which is rooted in memory reconsolidation practices. And we're going to learn what the heck that is today. I also do a lot of parent coaching and consultation, which is equal parts practical, like what do I do about, what do I do when, but also it involves memory reconsolidation and deep work too, because it's really difficult to use skills when you're too triggered to use them. So you have to heal those triggers in order to be able to do something different. So let me get started. If people come in, they will come in, then I will let them in. But I'm going to share my slideshow with you, and hopefully we will have some fun. So I've timed it. We got about 35 to 40 minutes of content, including a case example, and then time for questions. So if there are questions while we're while we're going through the slideshow, that's fine. You can ask them. Otherwise, we should have plenty of time at the end. So, memory reconsolidation, eliminating symptoms at the root. That probably is triggering all kinds of ideas and thoughts in you. So just notice what that brings up for you right away as I even talk about eliminating symptoms at the root. Until the year 2000, it was pretty much taken as straight up fact in our field that what was in your unconscious, A, drove your life, and B, was indelible, right? That's pretty much the truth. And it was known then, as also straight up fact, that the only thing you could then do with the material in your unconscious was make it known, so build insight into it, right? And choose alternative pathways through neuroplasticity, build up preferred ways of being. But the problem is that the original unconscious learning is still there, driving behavior. So if it gets triggered enough, it will still happen. This is what I like to call, we're doomed. Basically, in a nutshell, all honor and respect to Freud, but it's not a very hopeful way of looking at humanity. But it was known to be absolutely true, and is still kind of known to be true in many circles. Until after the year 2000, a bunch of people were researching this question and realized, just kidding! You can totally, absolutely, 100% change things that are in the unconscious. Profoundly. How did this happen? Well, this man is my teacher, Bruce Ecker, licensed marriage and family therapist. You can click on his link here and find his robust Google Scholar list of scientific articles. And over the late 20th century, over like several decades, Bruce asked this question: what makes transformational therapy sessions transformational? By transformational, we mean a symptom goes away permanently, effortlessly. You're not constantly combating it. So he studied rolls and rolls and rolls of transcripts of sessions where that effect happened, of therapy sessions, and sort of engineered this protocol, which at the time was called depth-oriented brief therapy. Wrote a book about it, and realized that there was this process by which people could unlearn schemas at the root of their symptoms. At the same time, in another discipline of science, researchers in neuroscience all across the country and the world were looking at this on a molecular level, at a synaptic level, to see, in a lab setting, can we get animals of all kinds to powerfully unlearn something that they have learned? And the answer was a resounding yes. This is an actual image from a molecular memory reconsolidation project. The citation is below, and you can check out that article, 2007 article from Nature Reviews Neuroscience. The bottom line is what these two bodies of research show us is that anything that's learned can be unlearned. Full stop. I have a picture of an astronaut here to show you my favorite example of this, which is a phenomenon that was found when astronauts came back from the International Space Station. They all seemed to have this really weird problem where they would be holding a pen and they would just drop it, right? Or they'd be holding their lip gloss and they'd just drop it. Because they forgot gravity. They forgot gravity. If we can forget gravity, if we can unlearn gravity, we can unlearn anything. And this actually happened, this example came into a session of mine recently very powerfully where I had a client working with a sense of low self-worth, like I just don't belong. And so a common question that you can ask is, well, were you born knowing that? Was that something you were born with? And my client said, no, but I wasn't born knowing gravity either. And I said, aha, let me tell you about the astronauts who came back from the International Space Station. And he said, touche. So memory reconsolidation is this common process that Bruce Ecker was coming at from the clinical side and that scientists were coming at from the lab side. It is an evolved, inbuilt mechanism for profound and total unlearning or updating of schemas. Schema by any other name would smell just as sweet. You might call them other things depending on your theoretical orientation. You might call them internal working models or mental models. You might call them implicit or procedural memories. You might call them parts or the knowings that parts carry. You might call them object relations, internalized object relations, terms of attachments. One of my teachers, Jules Taylor Shore, calls them emotional knowings. Whatever you want to call them, these are the learnings, the non-conscious, unconscious, preconscious learnings that drive much of what we do. So just a moment to clarify how exactly a schema works. Well, the schema lives in the unconscious, kind of like the root of a dandelion lives below the ground and you cannot see it. You do not know what it is. And just like the root of the dandelion grows to create the plant, which flowers, the schema necessarily grows up and out of the unconscious to produce conscious symptoms. So this dandelion is going to be my working metaphor as we go through this. Symptoms are emotionally necessary to have. We often think of the symptom as the problem that the client has come to therapy to address, but it's actually a solution to a much worse problem. So a schema, which is an emotional knowing, implicit memory, and internal working model, is actually an inventory of how the world works and the kinds of problems and sufferings that are likely to be encountered. It's kind of a prediction of what is your world going to look like based on the data that we see now. And if you're growing up in an abusive environment, a hostile environment, in a neglectful environment, there are some irreconcilable problems and unbearable sufferings that you need to find a way to deal with. And you can't run away to another family to solve them. Symptoms pose unique, durable, elegant ways to solve those problems and reduce that suffering. Now, symptoms are costly. People come in saying the symptom hurts so much, please make it stop. But at the time when the schema was formed, the suffering that the symptom posed was less than what the original problem caused. It's sort of like if you have cancer, you're willing to do chemo. But if you don't have cancer, you would never do chemo, right? The suffering of chemo is worth the solution it poses to the cancer underneath. So symptoms are solutions. How do symptoms solve problems? Well, according to Bruce's findings, there's 4 general ways that symptoms work to solve problems from the perspective of the person forming them. And we're going to have illustration of this later. They can decrease suffering, increase well-being, increase justice or fairness, and increase safety. Now, you might be asking yourself right now, how does a painful symptom that my client wants to get rid of achieve these things? More on that later. Just hold that thought in your mind. Sidebar note, at this point, some of you may be thinking, this lady is off her rocker. What the heck is she talking about? What do you mean erase memories? I know that what I'm saying might be confusing or might fly in the face of some of the things that you hold to be true about your work or, confronting in some ways. So I just want to clarify, memory reconsolidation it's a form of neuroplasticity. If you believe in neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to grow and change, then memory reconsolidation is already part of something you know. It's an ordinary quality of any brain. If you have a brain, you can achieve memory reconsolidation. And it is part of a body of rigorous scientific study, meaning it's confirmable in lab studies at the synaptic and molecular level. Here's what I'm not talking about. Memory reconsolidation is not a therapeutic orientation. It's not a school of thought. It's not a new method of therapy. It is an underlying biological principle that many schools of therapy already leverage, and that you, all of you listening, can leverage no matter what therapeutic orientation you use. So my hope is that today you'll walk away with some skills that leverage memory reconsolidation that can make what you're already doing more intentional and purposeful to bring about transformational change in your clients. This is not extinction rebranded, right? So extinction is a behavioral mechanism by which you can quasi-eliminate symptoms, but extinction in and of itself does not necessarily enact memory reconsolidation. It can, but it doesn't necessarily. And in many cases of extinction, the original symptom is totally retriggerable. So it's not a very durable. It's not durable in comparison to memory reconsolidation, which is. This is not magic. This is not brainwashing. This is not like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where we're like erasing people's actual memories of what happened and who they are. You can erase procedural and implicit memories while autobiographical memory stays intact. So we're not brainwashing people. This isn't Total Recall, okay? Finally, memory reconsolidation does not depend on insight or voluntary client behavior to happen. So you can actually help someone to completely eliminate a schema and the symptoms that it generates, and they don't actually need to have a ton of insight into specifically what caused that symptom to be there or the schema to be learned. Also, the symptom will go away if you've erased and eliminated the schema, whether the client works at it or not. So this is not a bigger, better series of symptom counteraction, right? Just wanted to clarify that. So it's always good to start thinking about how does this apply. So I wanted to start giving you a case example of a client of mine who I worked with. Obviously, details are changed to protect the client's privacy, and how we discovered some of their schemas and the symptoms that arose from that. So this is Susan and her dad. Now I see Susan as an adult, but this is Susan as a child living in her home where there's, no one to rescue her and remove her from that environment. And so there's a big problem. So do you remember the problem that is the schema responds to an irreconcilable problem that causes suffering. So the problem here is dad explodes ragefully, terrifyingly, whenever there's any kind of conflict in the home. Now remember, children cannot change this, right? And children also Susan rightfully understands that if she tries to stop dad or call him out on that behavior, that exposes her to further risk. She's got to figure something out, okay? So, solution. I must keep the peace at all cost. It's safer than triggering dad's terrifying rage. That's actually a pretty sensible solution when there's no other available solution to be had, such as running away to a better family. The schema, if we could put it into words, and we absolutely can, sounded something like this as Susan and I discovered it. It is never safe for me to disagree, to call out misbehavior, or create discomfort of any kind. If I do, Dad will get mad and scary, and I might not survive it. Schemas that are formed when we're children are formed with the mind and worldview of a child. So children perceive things that are scary and terrifying to be life-threatening and annihilative. Even though it might just be Dad yelling, for a young child, that might actually be perceived as a life threat. So what are the solutions, aka the symptoms that address this schema? Susan has learned to suppress her emotions. Again, this is all happening non-consciously, right? So she doesn't feel many feelings. She knows her job is to take care of everyone around her. She comes last, everyone else comes first. She avoids conflict at all cost. Like if the wrong meal gets delivered to her at a restaurant, she would rather eat it than call the waiter over and say, actually, there's a problem here. And she is really good at over-functioning. She functions at such a high level, so much higher than everyone else around her. And this really saved her butt in her family growing up. This protected her. Now, if we go back to our reasons, as we said, symptoms are solutions, not problems, right? And the 4 kinds of solutions that symptoms pose, I want to ask you, how do Susan's symptoms solve her problem? Which one or ones are her symptoms doing? Are they decreasing suffering, increasing well-being, increasing justice, or increasing safety? What do you think? Pop on the mic.
Increasing safety.
Totally increasing safety, because it's not safe to do anything that would increase Dad's rage, yeah? Yeah. One could also argue that there's a decreasing suffering part to it too, where it's like, if I can just lay low and take care of everybody else, then maybe Dad won't explode so much. But there's the strong flavor of increasing safety. Did everybody catch that? Make sense? Okay. So, yes, these are the symptoms that she has. All right. So let me compare and contrast what therapy looks like when you don't use a memory reconsolidation lens and when you do. When you don't use a memory reconsolidation lens, what you're doing is counteractive. You are counteracting symptoms, working to fight against them, combat them. And so I have illustrated what this looks like with my little pair of scissors here. And it's really just lopping off all those dandelion flowers. My 7-year-old was asking me what I was doing yesterday, and I sat her on my lap and I showed her the slideshow. And I showed her this slide and I said, so what happens if you do this? Is this a good way of getting rid of the dandelions in the yard? And she said, no, they'll just grow back. So if a 7-year-old can understand that, we can see it too, that this is not a sustainable or durable way of addressing symptoms. This is symptom management, which I affectionately and lovingly refer to as whack-a-mole, right? Everyone's favorite carnival game. They just keep coming up and you keep having to bop them. And oh, there's one over here. Now, counteracting symptoms is a tried and true part of our field. And it's really good to have counteractive skills in our skill set, tools to support clients, in all kinds of symptoms that they come in with. But if all we're doing is counteracting, it'll just grow back, right? So we want to have another way of approaching therapy, and looking at it from a memory reconsolidation standpoint offers that other way, a transformational way. So I offer to you the mechanism of transformational therapy. Oh, there's Mithin. Okay, so here's what transformational therapy looks like. No schema, no symptom. If you can pull out the entire schema system and dissolve it, the symptoms just go away by themselves. Now, that may seem overly reductive and simplistic. And you know what? Sometimes it really is that simple. There's one schema and one symptom. You eliminate the schema, the symptom goes away. For simple constructs, it can be reductivistic, it can be simple, but sometimes things get complicated. So sometimes things can look more like this. One schema can generate multiple symptoms, right? I call this the bang for your buck scenario, because if you can eliminate this one schema, symptom 1, symptom 2, and symptom 3 all go poof. So it's a pretty efficient deal. Other times, you can have multiple schemas all supporting one symptom, a multifunctional symptom. I call this the Swiss Army knife symptom, where a symptom is achieving multiple goals. One particular kind of symptom that accomplishes this, surprisingly, is low self-worth. Feeling like crap about yourself, or knowing that you're worthless, that you don't belong, that you're unworthy of love, etc., is actually a highly functional symptom that can address many schemas. So thinking about a childhood scenario that would necessitate that sort of knowing, right? Like if you're not going to get the love anyway, well, it must be your fault. You must be unlovable, right? Or if bad things are happening, it must be all because of you. It's better to know that than to suffer the pain of knowing that people are just cruel around you, right? So it's a bit of a turning on its head to think of low self-worth, feeling like garbage about yourself, as actually a highly functional symptom, but it's a very effective, highly functional symptom that addresses many schemas. Then sometimes it gets really complicated. And this is what my teacher, Jules Taylor Shore, affectionately refers to as spaghetti brain. This happens in cases of high complexity, like complex PTSD, fragmentation, and we might have this schema and this schema connecting to this symptom, and this schema going to this symptom and this symptom, but not that symptom. And this can require a lot of time and careful piecing apart to create change over time, right? So sometimes if you have a very simple schema to symptom construct, things can happen really fast. But other time we are literally stuck in the weeds and piecing through this sort of underground forest of symptom driving schemas. Memory reconsolidation is the common underlying factor in many transformational therapies. This is not a complete list, but you can look on this list and see if there's something that you do. And if you're doing something on this list, congratulations, you're already doing memory reconsolidation. You might know that, you might not know that. Good friends like EMDR and its cousin brain spotting, body-based therapies like somatic experiencing and sensory motor, things like Gestalt, even psychodynamics can enact MR. These are ones where they've been part of this systematic body of review that Bruce Ecker and his colleagues have done, where he has gone through transcripts of these and many more theories, theoretical orientations, and determined, yes, a memory reconsolidation did in fact happen here. Only a partial list. So, how do you enact a memory reconsolidation? Well, the brain requires 3 steps. So if you know what those are and you provide the brain those steps, you can support a client in reconsolidating a memory. Step 1, reactivate. We must re-evoke or reactivate the target schema. So what is the schema underlying the symptom that the client wants to go away? And we reactivate it in a visceral way, not in a cognitive thinky way. More on that later. Step 2 is the mismatch unlock step. So schemas are not just descriptions of how the world is, they're also predictions of how the world is going to be. And so when we encounter an error, a mismatch in the prediction that we expect things, and we viscerally experience, well, this feels true, about the situation, and this also feels true about the situation, and they're both viscerally active at the same time, again, not cognitively, but experientially, the brain automatically turns on its mismatch detectors to try to figure out, well, what's real? What actually predicts reality in a better way? When we do that first mismatch, it unlocks the schema, right? So schemas consolidate, meaning they become sort of hardened and they are no longer available to be updated. Think of it like putting a file in a zip drive, right? You know it's there, but you can't really look at it or access what's in it or edit it. The mismatch step, that first juxtaposition, unlocks that schema, that neural network, and makes it available to be edited. So it's like taking it out of the zip, unzipping it, and now I've opened the file and I can look at it and see what's inside. That creates what's called lability. It makes the memories labile and able to be updated. Once a memory is in that labile state, it remains labile for about 5 hours, and that's when step 3 comes in. During that 5 hours, the person's brain is going to continue doing that mismatch detection, sort of by itself, as long as both circuits, the old and the new, remain alive and active. And then after that 5-hour period, the neural network shuts down again, meaning it reconsolidates. So it was consolidated, it deconsolidated, now it's reconsolidating, and it goes back into the zip drive. So those are the basic steps. But then, okay, if the goal is we need to find that schema and we need to activate it, how the heck do you find a schema? We're going to find out. The symptom is the path to the schema. So if you follow that symptom, it will take you there. And I think of it kind of looking like this. You're sort of tugging on that symptom and going, what's under here? What's under here? What's under here? I want to take a whole slide to lean into an important pillar of transformational therapy, which is coherence empathy. And the coherence is a word that you'll hear me talk about later in coherence therapy, which is the new name for what Bruce and his colleagues found in this book, Depth-Oriented Brief Therapy. Coherence means it makes sense. Symptoms are not irrational. They are not maladaptive. They are not illogical. They make sense. They make sense if you understand the problem that they are responding to. They're not responding to a problem that's happening now. They're responding to a problem that happened then. And the then doesn't really matter. It could be in childhood, it could be in teenage years, it could be in adulthood. It doesn't really matter. William Faulkner said, the past is never dead. It isn't even past. So symptoms make sense, and we offer empathy, or also of courseness, which is what Jules Taylor Shore calls it, for both the symptom being there and for the client's desire to get rid of it. In coherence empathy, we call in coherence therapy, we call having empathy for the function of the symptom, adopting the pro-symptom position. This does not mean I'm in favor of the symptom. It means I'm the Lorax, I speak for the trees. I'm speaking for the power and the wisdom and the elegance of the symptom in solving a problem that's long past. There's also the anti-symptom position, which the client will come in really well in touch with. They'll tell us why the symptom hurts and how much they want to get rid of it. And I can have empathy for that too. Coherence empathy is empathy for both the pro-symptom position, the functionality, wisdom, elegance, and durable solution that the symptom poses, and also the anti-symptom position. Wow, and at the same time, this symptom is also causing a lot of pain and problems that you would like to be done with. So, coherence therapy is basically, if we take the steps of memory reconsolidation and turn them into therapy, here is what you get. Other schools of thought that leverage memory reconsolidation, like EMDR, IFS, They do the steps of memory reconsolidation, but in slightly different orders and in slightly different ways. So there's no right or wrong, but if you're looking for a direct one-to-one correlation about how to operationalize those 3 steps that the brain requires, you can't get more simple than this. And here they are. 1, identify symptom. 2, discover schema experientially, and that is our key word, experientially, not cognitively. 3, create a mismatch. I'm going to teach you how to do these things. Step 1, symptom identification. We ask the client, what would be different from our work together? What specific pattern of behavior, thoughts, and feelings would you like to change as a result of our work? So they'll tell us. We get specific. What exactly is the symptom and when does it occur? Don't assume you understand, right? We fail to appreciate the degree to which we do not understand. Bruce says specificity, 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 said in the same way that you would say location, location, location. So you can say to the client, imagine I'm telling you I have this exact symptom. What would you need to hear to know it's exactly like what you experience? So use whatever knowledge you have about contact and client experience. We want to get the somatics, the imagery, the thoughts, the emotions, the movement impulses, the memories, the images, whether you use SIBAM from somatic experiencing or the 5 mice from sensory motor, or IPNB has its own one, Dan Siegel has his own one. He has his wheel, the wheel of experiencing, right? You want to get really specific granularly and go into a specific recent moment when the symptom occurred. You can begin to get experiential by saying, I want you to walk me through a specific recent incident when this symptom occurred. Tell me about it in the first person and tell me about it in the present tense. So not a general, like, when you tell someone you don't like them and they blow up. No, that's second person. No, we want first person and we want here and now languaging. So it would sound like, I'm talking to my best friend about my job and she looks like she's listening, but she seems like she's kind of distracted. Okay, so it's immediate, it's urgent, it's visceral. Working experientially activates schemas. If a schema is not active, it cannot be transformed. It's still in that zip file. Experiential work in the here and now wakes up, turns on, and makes alive that schema so that it can then be rendered labile and transformed. So when we get into this second step here, we're going to be using a lot of experiential tools. And I want you to walk away with 3 new tools for your toolkit that come out of coherence therapy. 1 is symptom deprivation, 2 is sentence completion, and 3 is the overt statement. I'll tell you a little bit about each one. Symptom deprivation is an imaginal exercise where we have the person go into that specific recent experience where the symptom was present. And then we have them vividly, viscerally, and in a slowed down manner imagine being without the symptom. What usually happens then is some kind of feedback comes in, either from the body, the thoughts, the emotions, the images, the memories. Something comes in that says, ooh, no, that's uncomfortable, that's unwelcome, that's not workable, I don't like it. Even though we know the client would like to be without the symptom, right? This is not the miracle question. The miracle question is a counteractive technique where we're inviting the client to imagine a preferred future and try to sort of live into it. Yes, we're asking them to imagine that preferred future, but we're asking them to notice, even though they might hate to admit it, something that feels really bad about it, right? So that's a very powerful technique. And the real key here is to slow things down. So I'm going to give an example of that later. It's part 2. Again, we're tugging on the symptom to get us down to that schema. So sentence completion. A person says, well, I just can't, oh, this is Susan. I just can't make any conflict. Like, no, can't make any conflict. Instead of asking a question, I'm going to take her into that experience. We're going to talk from it, not about it. And I'm going to use a sentence completion to do that. So Susan's saying, I just can't get into any conflict with anyone. And so I would say, I can't get into any conflict because if I do, and let her brain just automatically finish it. Now, this is a part of psychodynamic or psychoanalytic work. It's just used in a really tailored way, and you can keep inviting that. Sometimes you'd have to offer a sentence completion 3, 4, 5 times before we start going down toward the schema. The overt statement is sort of like an anti-affirmation. The overt statement explicitly puts into vivid, emotionally urgent language both the anti-symptom and pro-symptom position. It articulates the schema and the symptom and puts them together in a way that makes it apparent that the client has agency in the moment. So for Susan, being able to notice, I must avoid conflict at all cost. It's really critical that I not have any feelings of my own and keep the peace to avoid dad's rage, right? So that's kind of an overt statement of what she's up to. And in coherence therapy, this is a very useful tool. It's kind of a multi-tool where you could offer that back to a client, share that in the context of the current situation, so that they can say, yes, that is what I'm doing there. Yeah, I'm avoiding conflict here because it feels like they're going to attack just like dad. But wait, are they dad? And they can start to begin to experience a mismatch right there. Or they might say, yes, that is the truth. That is the truth of what it feels like I'm doing there. This may be murky. I realize these are brand new ideas, but I'm going to show them to you in an example in a moment. Okay. These are ways of discovering the schema experientially. You can also ask helpful questions. So let's say a person says, let's say Susan says, I just can't deal with conflict. Yes, it seems so important to avoid conflict. I wonder what you know about how important it is to avoid conflict. Right? Something like that. As opposed to, let me teach you some assertiveness skills, or me making a guess about it. Because my guess is, Bruce is fond of saying human brains are so complex, you'll never guess it right. So you have the expert in front of you, why not ask? Another question could be, wow, yes, you've gotten to be so good at avoiding conflict. That's really important for you. When did you learn to do this? Or how did you learn to do this? Right? So you can hear my coherence empathy. I'm really validating and acknowledging that symptom is really important and effective. Okay, final step. Oh, sorry, this is another part of step 2. Discovery also involves integration, where we are making known and transparent in a conscious way, possibly for the first time ever, all aspects of the schema, the solution posed by the symptom, the pro-symptom position, the anti-symptom position. So we offer coherence empathy, we offer lots of overt statements, and something unique to coherence therapy is writing all that down and inviting clients to take it home with them, to just be in touch with, keep it from going back into the zip file. It can be an index card, it can be a text message. I will actually make people little graphics to put on their wallpaper screen, more about that later. And that way, every time they open their phone, they're getting a little experiential hit of the learning that helps them to integrate everything that we have now discovered very powerfully and experientially about their symptom. The final step is to create that mismatch. And that's where we take the learning that we have discovered through the overt statement and pair it at the same time with a subjectively true knowing that contradicts the original knowing. Now, this is entirely subjective. What we might think would contradict might not be what the client will find contradictory. So this might be something like, for Susan, I can never get involved in any conflict ever because it will trigger dad's wrath and that's unsurvivable. And I might say, well, we've gotten into conflict and survived it. And you've all been here where the client says, yeah, but I pay you. That doesn't register as a subjectively true contradiction. That registers as sort of an anomaly. It doesn't register as an exception that breaks the rule. Okay? You can use any technique you want to do the mismatching, to do the discovery. You might say, you know what, this would be a great time to do empty chair work. Put each schema into an empty chair and have them talk to each other. Do parts work, right? Good old-fashioned IFS. To have empowered imaginal reenactments, to do psychodrama, to have parts of the body engage in dialogue or movement. Inner child work often comes up here. Whatever works. They're all the same roads to Rome, right? Again, as I stated before, we repeat that mismatch as much as we can, doing an empathic review of what we've learned, using a take-home card, using what I call a glimmage. That's an image on it's a portmanteau of glimmer and image. Glimmer is a Deb Dana term, anything that puts you back into your window of tolerance. So it's an image that helps viscerally light up the learning and experientially trigger the client's new knowing. In this way, the target learning updates or gets eliminated and symptoms start to disappear. Case example, pictures worth 1,000 words. Let's go back to our friend Susan and just a reminder of her schema and the symptoms. Her schema says, it is never safe for me to disagree, to call out misbehavior or create discomfort of any kind. If I do, Dad will get mad and scary and I might not survive it. And we can recall her symptoms of emotion suppression, compulsive caretaking, conflict avoidance, and overfunctioning. Okay, so now Susan's a grown-up and her 30-year business partner, Jackie, is an alcoholic. They run a very successful multi-million-dollar company. And for years, Susan has been shielding everyone from Jackie's chaotic behavior, which has gotten everyone into a lot of trouble recently and has come to a breaking point that the board of directors can no longer ignore. They have now tasked Susan to confront Jackie and issue an ultimatum that she needs to take a leave of absence, get into treatment, come back with 30 days sober and a treatment plan plus a work plan, or else tender her resignation. This is Susan's worst nightmare. She is showing up to me saying, I'm terrified. I can't even imagine doing this. How the heck am I going to do this? Whenever she even thinks about going into this meeting, she feels extreme guilt and panic. So here's what I did. We already knew a little bit about her schemas because we'd done some work together. So we began with a little bit of symptom deprivation. And I started by saying, how would you like to be in this meeting with Jackie? And she said, well, I'd like to be able to just go in and, set some boundaries and make some requests and be confident and not feel like I was hurting her or being a bad friend. And I said, okay, walk into the experience with me. And I have her I walk her into a visceral imagination of going into this meeting. And I'm slowing down, I'm using a kind of hypnotic tone of voice. You're walking into the boardroom. Picture what it looks like. Jackie's sitting there. Notice it's in the present tense. I might even say it in first person as though I'm a thought bubble in her own head. And, I slow down in this way and then I say, and you begin to give her this feedback and you're feeling confident. There's no trace of guilt in your system. You make some requests, you set some boundaries. Jackie doesn't like it, she accepts it, and you're feeling okay in yourself. And I repeated that a few times. And then I say, what do you notice happening? And she goes back, she kind of has this pullback reaction, says, no, I can't do that. And we go into, well, what happens? Well, I feel this sense that she looks so much bigger than me. Like she's going to stand up and bite my head off. And I feel so guilty and I feel terrible. Okay. So and so now I go in with my overt statement. So if I call Jackie on her behavior, she's going to be so scary. She's going to bite my head off, and I will be a bad friend. And notice I'm using very emotional, extreme, what coherence therapy calls limbic language. And she says, yeah, yeah. And I have her imagine saying that to Jackie, something like this. Jackie, I'm never going to call you out on your behavior, even though it could cost us this company that we've spent most of our lives building, because that would be better than facing your anger and feeling like a bad friend. And Susan looked at me and said, that's ridiculous. And I said, oh, is it? And I said, but what about how important it is? And I'm still leaning in with my coherence empathy. And I'm not being paradoxical or being tricksy here. I'm saying, let's keep finding where that schema is, because that schema knows Jackie is just like dad. And Susan thinks about it for a second, and she's feeling it out. Jackie does. No, she's not. She's not my dad. I'm not a kid anymore. And I'm like, oh, so there's nothing scary about setting boundaries and making requests? And she says, I can do those things. I can do that. And I said, oh, notice what happens inside when you do that. And notice I'm pulling to see, is that schema still holding sway over what she can do in this meeting? I'm trying to see if I can reactivate it. And she's like, and I have her picture, go back into the meeting and picture it again. Is there any trace of the guilt, of the panic, of the fear? No, I'm just setting boundaries and making requests. I can do that. I'm good at that. I put that on a glimmage for her. I put that on a graphic and I sent it to her and said, put it on your phone. Just look at it every time you open your phone and sense into the felt truth of that. A few days later, Susan gave Jackie the feedback at the meeting. She was confident. She was no longer gripped by the guilt of hurting Jackie's feelings. The schema no longer held sway. Here's my glimmage. I can set boundaries and make requests. I'm good at that. And the figure in the middle is actually important to this, because when I ask people, so the new learning is, I can set boundaries and make requests. I'm good at that. Is there any imagery that comes along with that by itself? Just notice what happens. And Susan said, well, yeah, there's like this rose-colored figure eight kind of between us. Oh, okay, yeah. How do you feel toward that rose-colored figure eight? I feel good. I feel like it makes me feel strong, and it reminds me that, like, yeah, I can do this. I'm good at this. She said it was sparkly too, so it's got sparkles on it. So I made that conscious also, in addition to putting her own words. Oftentimes I'll try to add an image or a gesture so that it's kinesthetic, it is sensory, and it's also cognitive. But this is very experiential. This is non-cognitive. Looking at this for Susan takes her right back into the felt sense of the new learning. There is so much to learn here. I spent the last 2 days in a weekend workshop, 7 hours each day, and there's still so much to learn. But if you want to keep diving into this, I can't think of any better ways to begin than by reading Unlocking the Emotional Brain, Memory Reconsolidation, and the Psychotherapy of Transformational Change by my teacher, Bruce Ecker, and his colleagues, which goes into this in much more detail, including looking at specific examples of other kinds of therapy and how they enact memory reconsolidation. The Coherence Therapy Institute, with my teachers Bruce Ecker and Sarah Bridges, offers the most reasonably priced trainings you will see on, anywhere, period. Like EMDR will set you back a small mortgage, coherence therapy will not. I recommend beginning with a 6-hour on-demand intro workshop, and you can click on this link here and it will take you there. And then if you're feeling really geeked out, you can get oh, I left it at home. The Coherence Therapy Practice Manual, which is this spiral bound manual that walks you through in granular and great detail all of these steps, including specific cases for anxiety, panic, phobias, low self worth, um, uh, underachievement, things like that. I like learning from people in person, so here are some more ways to learn. This course with Jules Taylor Shore on therapy wisdom is great and also a great deal at, I think, like $200. Jules Taylor Shore is a terrific experiential integrative psychotherapist who is bringing together the sort of roots of memory reconsolidation with things like IFS, deep brain reprocessing, accelerated experiential dynamic processing, somatic experiencing, and more. Everyone on this page lives in Austin. I don't know what it is about Austin and coherence therapists, but that's where they all are. This is another teacher of mine, Tori Olds, who has a bi-monthly training group that I attend with Bruce Ecker. She also has her own series of trainings called Minding the Heart, which is about integrative experiential psychotherapy. And then, that's my client. And then these three lovely folks, Sam, Josh, and Kina, all train in coherence therapy. Kina, you might have seen her on Instagram. She focuses a lot on complex PTSD, and her Insta is worth a follow. Finally, oh, look, it's me. I have a monthly consult group, and because this is how I think, we talk a lot about we talk a lot about coherence therapy, memory reconsolidation, a lot of parts work in there as well, based on another certification of mine. My next meeting is February 25th from 10 to 12, and you can email me for more details. I hope you've learned something you can integrate into your skill set today. As I tell my coherence therapy colleagues, keep calm and reconsolidate on. And that's my slideshow. We have time for questions. What can I clarify? Is everyone like that exploding brain emoji now, or like?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. I feel like there's all kinds of deep schemas getting unlocked and like rumbling inside. So thank you.
It's rumbly. When schemas get unlocked, it can feel. A client of mine named it an ontological earthquake. Ontology is like what we believe to be true about reality, and so when a schema gets yanked on, it can literally provoke a feeling of rootlessness, of like, wait, what? People can get wobbly, their eyes can kind of start darting around, people might start laughing uncontrollably. It's pretty wild. So yes, if you're experiencing some ontological earthquakes of your own regarding your own schemas about the nature of therapy, which we all have, then I have reconsolidated some of your memories today.
Yeah, great presentation, Rebecca. Thanks so much. Good to see you. I gotta pop off, but love the dandelion, loved Susan. Yeah, it was great. Thank you. And I'm gonna look into those resources.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks for being here. Oh, Brace. I'm sorry, Brace. Thanks for being
Oh, all good. Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Thanks.
Ditto for me, Rebecca. Hi, nice to see you again. Yeah, the weed metaphor is fantastic. I just it never occurred to me that that's and then the way it kind of spreads out because you pull the weed out and it grow three of them grow back. That like the Hydra head of the Hydra, cut off one head and 10 replace it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Really well put together. Fun slides. I love your little animated stuff. It's cute.
Thank you. Thank you. In another life, I was a graphic designer, I think. I don't know. Sorry. Um, yes, Gabriella, what's your
Yeah,
question?
so I don't have a question, but I want to thank you. This was a fantastic presentation. What everybody said, thank you all for coming. I have to go too, but I hope you will join us next month. Hannah is presenting on equine therapy.
Yay.
And if you have any questions, I'm sure that Rebecca would love for you to reach out also afterwards and contact her. She's a great therapist. She's fantastic. She was my individual supervisor at Maple, and I have here another supervisor, Harold Young. So I feel like I'm in great company. But thank you all. I gotta go. And thank you, Rebecca, for the presentation.
You're welcome. And I want to offer, if it would ever be helpful, I'm happy to do one of these where I do a live demo and we can kind of in real time talk about what it looks like and how to offer these things more in practice, because I do want folks to be able to feel like you know how to use some of these things practically as well. So if that would be interesting, you can let Gabriella and Jacqueline know, and we can put that on the calendar for our next alumni roundtable or one of the ones in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Everyone, thank you, Harold, especially for being here. I'm so touched that
Thank you. It was a good presentation, and it's nice to see you're so zealous about something and doing so well. It really is.
yes, zealotry is my goal.
Some things are worth being zealous about.
I think so.
It is nice to see you, Harold.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice
And
to see you,
everybody.
everybody.
Yeah.
Nice
Thank you,
seeing you, Harold.
Rebecca.
Thank
right.
you, Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.